I'm Luca, and last time I mentioned two experiences that I did on scaling, one in Ferrari, the other in ThoughtWorks, both involving the whole organizations. Um, we talked about the three things the last time. We went through some element of the agile theory of simplicity. Very quickly, if I have to mention just one thing, I will remember to you the definition of Alistair Cockburn that make a distinction between framework and methodology. A framework is something that you read on a book that is defined, that it is the same for everyone. The methodology is what you apply in practice for your team, is this all the set of conventions that are agreed by the team. And it is the result of adaptation of the framework to the specific circumstances of the team. In order to do this, every framework is intentionally incomplete to leave room for this adaptation. And this is one of the key elements of Agile. Agile simplicity is what makes Agile. Then we gave a quick overview of some case studies. Some case studies of companies that you see on the left that achieved agility at scale successfully. What it means successfully? It means that from a business point of view, you can see that they are fast, adaptable, dynamic, resilient, and also they are financially successful. And we had a look at those companies, and we noticed that all those companies achieved that agility not following one framework and not following any scaled framework. Instead, what they did is they grow their own way of working internally, eventually taking inspiration from some of the lightweight frameworks and following or being congruent with Lean and Agile mindset. But no one by the book and no one use scaled framework. And then we had a look at other companies that took a completely different route. They went heavyweight with the scaled framework or also from a technological point of view. And all those companies didn't achieve any tangible benefit for the business. There was no sign of agile mindset, and there was no sign of autonomy for the team or technical excellence. Basically, those four companies, I would say, have failed based on the definition of success. And finally, we went through a set of expert opinion on SAFe, negative expert opinion. To sum up all the negative opinion on scaled frameworks and on SAFe specifically, is that you cannot find any one single leading expert that advised to use SAFe. I added my own personal opinions and I pointed out some element, this idea of upfront roadmap, agile release trains that from a technical point of view are, I mean, we have DevOps and continuous integration, safe requirement model that is going back to waterfall, PI planning that is extremely inferior to alternative practices such as Lean Inception or simply Inception or Google Design Sprint. But worse than that, SAFe tried to accommodate dependencies instead of removing them. One of the key points of Agile is aligning teams, improving technical excellence, aligning team with technology and with products so that you have very little dependencies. You cannot succeed when you have many dependencies. You are doomed. Then looking at the role, we saw some example how SAFe had additional layers of management instead of bringing you to a flat organization. And we talk again about how SAFe is an outdated digest of content that is primarily available already for free in the Lean Agile community. And to close, just not to be negative, we also give a hint about what are the alternatives. So I would like to ask you yourself to think about the team that you are working with and look at the delivery initiative that the team had in the last years or two. How many of those initiatives involved one single team? How many involved two teams or more inside your unit or department? How many of those initiatives involved instead many units? So I'm trying to ask you the question, what is the scale that you are facing? If the majority of the delivery initiative involved one team, so your scale is one team. If most of the delivery initiative involved few teams, that is your scale. If involved multiple departments, then that is your scale. And this gives you an idea of what is your current scale. But then when we start to think about what we should do, there are things that we should do to check if your current scale is the right one, or if you are just there because of incidental dependencies, because people from business and product area use the idea of economies of scale that come from the industrial age, but in software development and digital product, instead we have these economies of scale. What I'm telling you, it is possible that your current scale is artificial, is not real. So what the company should do even before starting to scale, should start to question their current scale, and then should check if through technical excellence or through decoupling and related product, they can already descale instead of scaling. Or through technical excellence, basically reduce 10 times the size of the code base once the technical debt has been solved. And then question if there is still a real need for scale, or if in the cases where there is still need to scale, once you have done those things, you put yourself in the best situation to start the scaling on the right foot. If you just jump into scaling without trying to solve technical debt, without removing accidental dependencies, without decoupling products that has been coupled artificially, you will very easily not get the benefit that you expect from scaling. And finally, this is the last bit, assume that you really want to scale. What approach should you use instead of using a scaled framework? Well, from the theory that we say, that we mentioned before, you should always start small. Try to make things work in one team, at least, because if you don't have something that is working well, you have nothing that you can scale. There is nothing to scale. If you are in a mess, you could only scale that mess. So start small and then grow experimenting, learning, and adapting. When you experiment, learn, and adapt, do not look at scaled framework. Instead, look at Lean and Agile principles, look at the theory of complex adaptive systems, and look out at the Agile community that provides you a knowledge base of patterns and other things that you can try, you can experiment and see if they work for you. And I think this is a fair, quite faster recap. Any question about the recap so far? Can you see the screen with the questions?
Yes.
So
yes, Luca. Sorry, I had too many open windows. Sorry for that.
No worries. Let's start with the first one. Corrado, if you, after the answer, if you just take the question out, that could still be useful. So let's start with the first one. Which one is the most popular scaled framework currently? any specific reason for its popularity. Recently, there has been the version 1 annual report, and the SAFE currently has 30% in terms of popularity of the commercial scaled framework. But there are also many companies that use hybrid approaches. Let me check if I can see. Let me check if I can see the hybrid approaches. Does anybody know this information?
Sorry, it does help if I unmute. From what I can remember of the version 1 surveys in the past, a lot of the hybrid approaches generally have Scrum and some other stuff. A lot of people just use Scrum and XP. I don't think much has changed since the last time I looked at the version 1 report in anger. Some people say they're using Scrum and Kanban and XP, so that's a combination that gets mentioned a few times. A percentage have been using kind of unified process type things like disciplined agile delivery, so there's a small cluster around that. I think some people claim they're using Lean as well, but again, I haven't looked at it in a couple of years, so I don't know what the numbers are, the percentages. But that tends to be. There's also, from what I can remember, a fairly reliable, like 5 or 6% who say they're not using anything.
I found it now.
Oh, cool, awesome.
So basically, to support what you were saying, can you see it?
Yep, we can see it.
So, even more than 30%, 35%.
I can remember when Rational Unified Process was incredibly popular, measured by the number of training courses sold.
It did.
And then we have Scrum of Scrum, and don't know that it's a lot of, I guess, a lot of hybrid, a huge percentage of the hybrid. Disciplined Agile is dying because it's going lower and lower. It was 5% before it was 10%. Less also is not in a great shape. And I think that Scrum of Scrum, we don't even have a Scrum at scale. I don't know, the way that I will interpret this is that we have two big players. We have definitely SAFE, and on the other side, we have hybrid approaches. All the other commercial approaches are kind of an incredible minority, are irrelevant. Would you agree with this? Anyone want to comment more?
Do you think that's actually because SAFE offers training and people feel comforted by being trained in a thing rather than necessarily people are like, well, we've learned the training, we'll do the thing. Whereas I feel like the other methodologies, where even when they do offer training, they're less comprehensive.
Yeah, I think that's one possible reason. Another reason, I came many years ago when there was Microsoft versus Linux, and for a lot of people, Microsoft provided a comprehensive documentation of everything. Linux was much more chaotic, and so a lot of people prefer to stay with Microsoft, until the point that internet was so innovative that the documentation of Microsoft was always out of date with the reality, with the technology that people was going to use today. And I think that reflect, I don't know, maybe it's similar with Agile. A lot of people don't feel comfortable to go to the Agile community and the continuous and chaotic innovation that is happening there. And they trust SAFE to provide them with that.
I think it's also an inspired name, isn't it? SAFE. People just feel safe.
Sorry,
But
say again.
it's also an inspired trade name. I mean, SAFE is just a good name. You've got to admit that. And what I've heard is, and I've observed this in a couple of large organizations, try to transform to a large-scale agile organization. SAFE means you don't need to let anyone go because there are lots and lots of jobs for everybody.
Yeah.
Luca, hello. Can you hear me, Luca?
Yes, please go ahead.
But Luca, thank you for the comment. The other thing that I've heard of SAFE is that it gives the senior management a warm, fuzzy feeling at the program level. It's that, I think that's one of the ways that it's sold from what I'm led to believe. So rather than just being IT centric, it gives you a framework beyond that, you know, to the high level planning, and maybe dovetails more easily with some of the banks which are more hierarchical and less likely, more rigid in the way they work. You've got a managing director who is all powerful, and you know, it's almost, I don't want to say hybrid, but it lends to that kind of structure. And I know a couple of banks that have headed that way, you know, with SAFE.
Yeah, there is a book or an author, Ralph Stacey, that you may have heard about the matrix, Ralph Stacey matrix, and he studies management science and the dynamics of organizations, and how traditional management have a set of assumptions. Why, when we look at complex systems and we see how they work, the assumptions are very different. But management and a lot of people that come from that traditional management feel extremely uncomfortable with all those assumptions. So, see, this exactly, I think this is congruent with what you say. Top management feel uncomfortable to change the assumption on budgeting, on the way that plan, the way that they deal with portfolio. So why SAFE make them feel more comfortable? Because SAFE do not change the way of working. That's the reality. Agile is has a lot to do with the complexity science, human complex adaptive systems, and all the work, modern work in management science that Ralph Stacey documented in his books.
Look at that is, sorry,
So,
look at that is spot on, because you touched last time on, I don't know whether it was your talk on the target operating models and agile target operating models. And this touches on this point, because what we look for at the senior level is a roadmap of the architecture and where it's going to be in 5 years and 3 years, and the spend that we're going to do. And that spend could be tens of millions of pounds in terms of the hardware and things. So if something can still give us those, that's a good thing. Yeah.
I think that just it's worth kind of adding a bit to that one. It's not that SAFE doesn't change the budgeting. It's very easy for you to not have to change your budgeting strategies while and adopt SAFE, because all the financial stuff, the primary source of all that intel is a guy called Don Reinhardtson, who did some really good work. It's a while ago now, it's maybe 10 years ago now, on product development flow, or words to that effect. And his take on accounting and taking that economic view is, a lot of that is in SAFE, but it's very hard to get to that point because that's all at the portfolio budgeting level. And organizationally, that's a governance question, which is very hard to change for a large structure that has a very complex, interconnected network of governance elements. And so you can't just change a bit of governance in one place because it's a system problem.
Yeah, on that topic, it's true that the theory is there, and this brings us back to one of the characteristics of SAFE, that it takes a lot of good ideas from the Agile community, but the way that those ideas are integrated goes against the original idea. So let me be specific on what you just talked about budgeting. Modern budgeting and modern planning recognize the unknowns and the uncertainty, and recognize the importance to involve people on the ground and at the edges of the organization in the budgeting and planning process. So even if you have a 3-month rolling budget, and even when we work with strategy, we need to involve more people in the process. So this is going toward the direction of Stacy, and this is going toward the direction of a modern agile adaptive organization. But then SAFe, what does SAFe does? Involve product managers, involve teams extremely late, have the 3 layers of roles in the hierarchy to separate the project managers. Look at the product owner. The product owner that in a normal company is empowered to look at the product and then to talk with the upper management and say, look, this is where the product is going. This is the input that I'm giving you in order to contribute to the strategy of the organization, and so to contribute to the reflection in the budget, right? That's what the product owner does. But in SAFe, a product owner, it becomes the owner of a user story of an epic. It becomes one that push the paper. Any more thought? I'm challenging. I'm adding to what you say, Zach. Any thought on this?
Yeah, I mean, so I think this is kind of drifting our mind onto the question of who the customer is in environments where you have any kind of scale delivery thing going on, because the customer stops being a direct part of delivery, right? The notion of a customer or the notion of a product strategy becomes a proxy for a customer. So I think some of what you're saying, I think, is a side effect of ending up operating at that scale. The product owner isn't the customer anymore. The product owner, when you're talking about multiple teams trying to do stuff in whatever their delivery methods, they have, if they're reasonable, a bunch of hypotheses about what their eventual customers might need. And that degree of uncertainty in what needs to be done is quite a difficult thing to actually make any kind of progress or headway in, because, you know, if you're faced with an infinite series of options, like, what do you do first? And I think it's human nature to suddenly go, right, I better narrow this down. I'll work on this thing being a story or a feature or an epic or whatever it else. And I think that narrowing stuff that you're talking about happens much more easily because of it.
This is where our good friend Tom Gilb comes in with stakeholder analysis. You know, you don't have one customer any longer. You've got lots of stakeholders who have an interest in having a good value delivered to them. And so he's provided us with tools to estimate, you know, both the cost and the value delivered of each thing that you do with the development. It's worth having a look at gilb.com to see how they do that.
And if you look at oh, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, he's also recently given a series of lectures on the subject, which are nice, easily digestible chunks of videos.
Cool. Yeah. I was just going to add to that one that if you look at sort of like traditional companies, the vast amount of effort that they spend or artifacts that they produce are designed around their internal processes. So they're very inward-facing entities. So most of the stakeholders are other parts of the business rather than the entity that gives them money on the outside.
Yeah, that's probably true. What I'm thinking is that many elements of SAFe seems to sustain the current approach. I heard what you suggested. Gilb is one of the first that did Agile. I think he invented the Agile idea even before Agile existed. And you also, Zach, you mentioned that the Lean thought leader that also suggested good ideas. But all those layers in the hierarchy, these additional roles, all those additional processes make it harder to implement also the things that you suggested. I don't think that user story product owner has the authority to involve all the stakeholders, to have those workshop, to come up with strategies, ideas, and talk with the upper management in SAFE. Because when PI planning reaches the team, everything has been already decided, and the people that made that decision is 3-4 hops away from you. There is no way for you to have a chat and say, look, I have very good idea, I have very good insight for you, we should change. Or look, we did an experiment. Everyone had a look, all the stakeholders had a look at the experiment. It didn't work, we need to steer. It's too late with SAFE. I think we beat it to that, these questions, unless someone have an opinion that want to add. Anyone has a burning desire to add an opinion on this?
I think for me personally, this is the 35% you show it. If you go actual in a company, might be 5%. I think the rest of the 30%, they have been measured because they're saying, okay, we are running SAFE as globally. But actually in theory, most of the company are not doing proper SAFE. So they have not implemented SAFE as per the book. So I think maybe it's 5–10% that you can actually pin it and say, yes, it's safe. Breathing and living safe, nothing else.
And what is the consequence of this?
I think it's a broken agile and spending a lot of funding. This is my view. And also on the top of that, yeah, it gives the fuzzy good feeling to the leadership because it's commercially, they can go back to a research and saying, but we are doing the same as everyone else. But they're spending more money than maybe in waterfall. If you calculate a broken SAFE, how much money they're spending in comparison to really good waterfall, they're doing the new shiny thing. As you said, they're not connecting with the customer and so on and so on and so on. So I'm not believing that is 35% of a company is doing real SAFE end to end. I think they just tick the box, yes, because this is the way to make to have a fuzzy feeling.
Yeah.
This will be my view. It's when you go, there is no CIO in top 100 that will say that are not doing agile. But we all know on this call, what is the percentage of companies, not the ones that you show on your slide, the top ones, but the real companies, not the new trendy companies, they're really doing agile. We all know that this is not true. So this is for me, it's yes, on paper, there are so many companies because commercially viable, but in reality, if you go and do analysis, maybe it's 5% of any company, they're doing agile. This will be my view.
Yeah, I think a minority. It's interesting that maybe talking about who is doing agile is not enough anymore, because otherwise it happened what you just suggested. The question should be who is doing good agile, and not agile by the book. I wouldn't be worried if a company doesn't do agile safe by the book, or doesn't do Scrum or extreme programming by the book, that I love extreme programming. The question that for me is more interesting is, are we doing good agile? That may be different even from the book. The point is that good?
I think it's the cost of doing a broken agile. How much does it cost the company to implement a broken way of working? Because it's actually costing them more. The rework and also even the turnover of people, they're fed up with a broken agile. If you calculate the cost, I will bet you that maybe 50% of agile initiatives are doing worse maybe than some of the small waterfall, but I mean not the yearly waterfall models, but maybe 3-4 months waterfall models.
So
not because I don't like agile, but just saying.
Iterative development.
Yeah, because for me it's like agile, it's amazing, but if you don't have a stable team and every single time you move your trains and teams and whoever it is, then you start from scratch. So what is the cost of that? No one calculates that. But this is huge cost because you haven't recorded everything, you haven't measured everything, whatever it is. You don't know what has been done, what is your goal, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So
yeah, what we are talking here, the concept that we have explored is the difference between good agile and broken agile. And I think that resonates with all-time agilists like us, that's our goal to do. Why are we bashing safe or something? It's not that we don't like something, it's to go back to what was the initial intent of all these. That was to do good for knowledge workers and to do good for the industry. That is exactly what you discussed before, talking about cost of good or broken agile. And I think that's a very good reflection. I would like to move
exactly.
to the next questions, just to move on and also to give the opportunity to for everyone to have their topics discussed. Sorry, the question is, what would you say are the key challenges of scaling agile in an organization that is growing quickly? So a quick, fast growing organization, what challenges are facing when scaling agile? Any one of you is in a fast growing organization or has been in a fast growing organization? Anyone that want to share their experience before I share mine?
I saw in my current client place where they are a product manufacturing company and they do sales and support side. So this is the two sides of the coin where I see Agile is useful on one side of the coin where the product development side and the research and everything, but not on the service and marketing side. That's where we use most of the projects are fall into waterfall and split of Agile. It depends on what is my scope and how the end customer is need is. So I see quite a fast pace of change in the delivery methodology and also the quality of the outcome of the deliverables. So
what challenges do you see? If I understood correctly, in the sales marketing, you see it more challenging to do agile. What type of challenges do you see?
I mean, when the customer is keep on changing his target deadlines and the deliverables and the requirements are keep on changing, when you have a fixed budget on the planning side, you are unable to use the agile methodology to 100% to scale up the project and deliver. Only certain element, what we did, I was working on a program which is having 3 verticals. 2 verticals have successfully gone live in the waterfall. And one of the vertical, what we initially thought is we will move everything into Agile because it's a first phase. We want to deliver in a waterfall to some part of the program. And the next phase of the program is always reusable components. So there we thought we move the waterfall methodology to Agile methodology so that we will save a lot of resources, human resources and planning and every time and everything. But in one of the stream where we struggled a lot is mainly the requirements are not clear. Based on the assumption, the project principles have built up that particular stream mainly. And they started building the agile sprints and everything, and they started delivering the project. But I never seen that project has successfully delivered in line to the customer need. And the customer is not happy as I saw on the waterfall for the initial phase. So, which is a tricky situation. And also the client is also learning the agile adoption overall. That's where I see a lot of challenges and opportunities internally for the client to use the 100% safe agile. So again, it's a different bag of combination where I saw it's tricky.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone else that faced a company that is growing quickly and want to
The only
comment
thing,
on
the only thing I'd say is that just taking a wider view, rather than just fixed budget, where the governance process is not changed. So that includes your budgeting, includes your contracting with your suppliers, includes the top layer not being bought into fail fast, fix fast. You know, all those things combined, you tend to get a lot of hurdles along the way as you say, okay, we've got this new methodology that we're going to be using called Agile. And these are the principles that we're going to be doing. Everyone's super excited about it, or a few people are, and a few people know about it, and the others don't. And lastly, it's around business engagement. If business aren't ready to engage you without looking at helping you break down those barriers, you're going to be up against a lost cause, aren't you?
Yeah, is what once I used the term of impedance of traditional way of working, and probably when you're making a contract with someone else, it's easier that the contract is approaching a traditional way of working, and that are obstacles, of course. And it's in a way it's sad that SAFE, for example, I find unhelpful instead of becoming a tool to teach upper management, to teach them about a new paradigm where you can plan and strategize at a high level in a way that is lightweight, in a way that is informed by many points of view, in a way that have an experimental mindset, and have an inherent ability to steer when things change, when new information come available. That's what we would like in an organization that is fast and adaptable. And that requires a different approach to contracts, a different approach to budgeting, a different approach of human resources, when we see human resources just as a resourcing of people, of headcount to fill fixed box for a project, and so on. And I find it a little sad that traditional or current scaled agile framework instead, especially SAFE, end up instead reinforcing the old way of working. Another topic, I just put it there, there was someone in the previous session, I think it was from ThoughtWorks, and ThoughtWorks recently grew up more, and someone mentioned how it's challenging to maintain the company culture when you are growing quickly. It's even harder if you want to create an agile culture, so create a new culture, and then to keep that culture when a lot of new people is coming. How do you balance giving freedom to people with the need to align them? Sorry, anyone want to add something about these questions, about challenges of scaling agile, especially on fast-growing company?
So I'm helping a couple of startups, and what my observation is, they want, it's a motivational, but it's not a habit. And usually the leadership are so busy of selling that they can't install the new culture to become a habit. And this is the critical. All the leadership of a new startups, they know that it's amazing to deliver agile, because at the moment, most of them are not delivering in any form and shape. They're just running to get the next sales, to get the next thing. But they know that the agile sounds really good. So they're motivated. They're motivated like going to the gym. And yes, I will lose weight, but you don't lose weight until you actually it becomes a habit. And I think also a lot of the new companies, they're not experienced that they have to create this culture in order to be competitive. So this is my view. It's motivation versus habit of agile.
Yeah, good point. Anyone want to add something on this topic before we move to the next question? No, so I think
Luca, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say also that when you are scaling, you are introducing some constraints that maybe teams should be forced to follow. For example, when you are one single team, you can decide your own architecture, your own tool, or what else. But when you are scaling and maybe you have 5, 10, 20 teams working together, maybe it's harder that each team can pick their own tool, their own architecture, their own practice, or what else, if they have to work together. But coming back to your question, if they are working on different products, they are not really scaling. They are adding more lines and not really scaling.
Yeah, thank you, Corrado. So when the number of people involved grow, the balance between alignment and freedom may change a little, and we need a little more alignment, or the benefit of alignment become bigger. That's what you are suggesting. Is that correct, Corrado?
Yes, it's actually, it's also the reality. I mean, if you have 10 teams that are working on the same product, maybe it's not really useful that one team is using a language, another team is using another language, or from the technical perspective, it's easy to understand that you have to share something. And maybe for you, it's not for your team, but it could be, let me say, for the work group teams is the best.
Yes, your comment make me remember another point that is important, that while we work at team level, we can focus on the team aspect. We should make it work at team level. When we start to involve multiple teams, it becomes essential to coach and to facilitate and to have people to collaborate across team. One of the outcomes of this collaboration is come to the agreements that you just described, Corrado. But there are also agreements about delivery initiatives, dependencies, and priorities. So recently, I don't know if you saw a post or an article recently with problems related to Spotify. And Spotify, this article described how Spotify, for some reason, specialized too much teams and end up in a situation when they have too many dependencies. But no one coached, trained, or facilitated team members to cooperate with each other. And also the theory of human complex adaptive system says that a huge impact on the outcome comes from the way that different teams, different units collaborate with each other. So yes, the structure is important. Yes, the processes may have an effect, an impact, but the biggest impact in the end is the interaction between individuals and across teams and departments. So that's definitely one thing that, Corrado, you make me remember that is definitely important.
Luca, that is the best point you've so far.
Yeah.
The intercollaboration of teams, particularly at the cross-program level, particularly when we're delivering regulations in the bank, and the way that regulators are deliberately layering the regulations so that one builds on top of another. This is critical for the success of adopting any framework inside. So thank you for that point.
Yeah, Yeah, thanks, Corrado, for remembering.
Sorry. Where would you start then? I mean, what top 3 things that you would do to overcome these multiple layers of issues?
Sorry, can you repeat a little louder? I didn't get you, Vivek.
Sorry, I was saying that what are the top 3 things that you would do to overcome this? Because it's so complex. I mean, obviously, it's always good to start at the top, but where would you start? How would you make it simple very quickly?
Simple to deal with dependencies and collaborate across team. Is that the question? So
yeah,
in Agile, very quickly, there are 2 ingredients. There is a huge literature in Agile to tackle the problem at 2 levels. The first level is technical, to remove technical dependencies or to relax the dependencies so that teams are much more autonomous. And the second element, quickly described by Conway Law, is to create alignment between the architecture and the team to reduce the number of dependencies. This thing is the thing that differentiates the traditional approach from the Agile approach. Agile make an incredibly huge effort because we know from Standish Group and that when there are too many dependencies, failure is almost certain. The second element is that coordination and cross-collaboration in the Agile way has a strong focus on the human aspect. So we realize that different projects, different initiatives, and different dependencies requires different approaches. If you hire the right people, if you bring them together, and if you ask them, given these dependencies, what is the best way to handle this, they will figure out the most effective way. Agile suggests a few ways. The traditional approach is to set up a standard process. Please, this is a big topic. If anyone wants to add something, jump in.
Luca, I don't know if this fits into Agile, but again, at the higher level where we do cross-collaborate across programs, we would have the different working groups. So we would have an architectural working group, we would have a regulatory working group, and a lot of the key stakeholders from finance, front office, data teams, IT would be at these groups so that the coordination is passed down. And this is where the cross-fertilization occurs.
Yeah. The Agile element, I'm asking you if the Agile element is there. The Agile element will be that these groups are not only top-down groups, but these groups involve also people that is doing the actual work. So you see what's really working on the ground, and the collaboration is unscripted. So you ensure that the collaboration happen, but you let people shape the collaboration based on what is working. The right collaboration should emerge based on what is working well. So to recap quickly, collaboration end-to-end, not only the bosses on the top, but also those doing the work on the ground, and collaboration unscripted. The type of collaboration emerges from what is working on that context and circumstances. If anyone wants to add something, go ahead. Otherwise, we move to the next questions as usual.
Yeah, Luca, if you agree, just because we have 24 questions in the queue, can we follow a lean coffee approach? Maybe we can start with 10 minutes for a question, and then we can extend other 5 minutes. On the contrary, we will not be able to go through all of them.
Please, Corrado, facilitate this.
Yeah, I will keep the time, okay? So if there are no more questions, I will move to the next one.
Yeah, and the next one is, what are the important things to understand scale portfolio management? Any comments? Scaled portfolio management. So we are talking about when we manage a portfolio of products and we have to decide and direct investment, budget, or simply priorities. The question is, what are the important things to remember to get it right, I assume? Any ideas, any comment on what worked and what did not work in the past for you?
Well, actually, the lean portfolio management in SAFE is one of the most successful practice for a leadership perspective in SAFE. So it's really curious that.
Actually, I asked a similar question. It's much further down, and that was sort of why I asked it. I asked, was there anything you thought that if you were taking little bits of any scale frameworks that you thought were good? And that was actually the thing that I had in mind, is actually I do think SAFE does portfolio management and gives some guidance when often people don't do it at all. I don't think they manage their portfolio at all. It's literally an absence of it, which I think leads to a lot of the other problems that we've talked about. And so while I'm with you, I don't love SAFE. That is one aspect that I'm kind of like, I do quite like that, and it's sort of ready to bake, and I don't actually think you have to do the rest of it to do it.
Can you add, sorry, go ahead.
All right, no, I just remembered like a load of work done by a guy called Richard Durnell a while ago, and Dan North's been talking about this sort of stuff, talking about why Agile doesn't work at scale, or there's some series of talks he did on that like 5-6 years ago. And this, for me, it's a really interesting one, because the people in an organization that have to make governance type decisions, where does money go? Do we kill this piece of work because it's not going to deliver the expected benefits, or it will deliver late and therefore we need to do something else? The ability to make that decision, I don't think fundamentally changes, because they're looking at predictions into the future, variances against these predictions, returns on investment. These are all trying to look a long way into the future to gauge it. And so the best thing I think that deliveries, irrespective of delivery strategy, agile, waterfall, whatever, is how does it feed useful intel so that portfolio management can continue to function? Because it has a certain degree of success based on waterfall based deliveries, because it had a certain amount of data which may or may not be accurate. Who knows? There's like a lot of variances there, but they are trying to make those, this project is late, it'll never get back on track, let's kill it. You then have politics at play, but let's park that for now. So I think the intent, the underlying intent of that level of the organization has always been sound, because that is what allows an organization to remain commercially viable, because they need money. So I think the things to understand from a delivery or an execution perspective is, how do you surface up leading indicators that actually your bit of this program or your bit of this portfolio of work is on track, is late, is early, is going to cost more, is going to cost less, so that that decision can be made. And there's always going to be errors in decision making like that, because they're not based on absolute certainty, they're based on predictions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I got a couple of points, but before going forward, Claire, can you tell which element you find useful of the lean portfolio management of SAFE? Before I play the devil's advocate and I point out to the problems, can you instead be the voice that point out to the things that you find useful in SAFE lean portfolio?
So actually, exactly something that I'm going to build on that Aaron said. I think actually an assessment of whether you should continue on with doing work, that I think it provides a structure for making those decisions, when in actual fact, if left to its own devices, often the sunk cost fallacy takes precedent, when you actually don't have to do any kind of meaningful assessment on whether that's really providing you with value. And I'm not saying that SAFE's the only way to do that. It wasn't really that I was saying that I think that that's the best, or it was more that it seems, when I'm talking to clients and I'm talking to other people, I see that it's an easy thing for people to understand and how to do it. You know, I want to do sort of like more about weighted job first and stuff like that, but often people find that hard to get their head round, and other things come into play. You can see the biases coming into play. So that was really my aspect of why I don't hate it. Like, it's not I don't like it, I don't hate it.
Yeah, good points. You are helping me to reflect to the point that I would like to point out later. Corrado, you also made a positive comment. I will also like to hear yours positive comments on the safe lean portfolio management.
Well, actually, I think that the fact that you can pivot on a quarterly basis instead of a yearly basis, as usually are managing the budget in traditional way of working, make think people that in this way they are agile, because they can change in the meantime. Okay, so this idea, I think, is really welcome from leadership, because they say, okay, so we have not a budget, a yearly budget, we have a quarter budget. And so this probably is a misunderstanding. So without probably, in my opinion, this is a misunderstanding, but the idea that they can, let me say, change the configuration of the budget in the middle of the year, and there is a framework that permit this, it's something that people like, leadership likes.
Okay, then I play the role of pointing out the negatives. I played that role. What is missing? Well, one thing very simple is that if you read Lean Enterprise, or you don't need SAFE really to apply a lean approach to portfolio management. You can find those guidelines in the book Lean Enterprise, from O'Reilly, Jets, Humble. So it's not something new. If you another point that I would like to point that is specifically to SAFE. SAFE provided this decision, so there is those activity of lean portfolio management. But then there are other things that remain in place. Why it is different to change a priority? Aaron, you mentioned politics. So a big thing of the work of Stacy, a big part of his work is to realize that politics is also what people do to deal with plans that are disconnected to the reality, and they have to do politics in order to try to make a predefined budget, a predefined plan work with the changing requirement and changing reality. So the politics is not something that happens randomly. There are some rigidity in the organization that lead to politics. And one of those rigidity is to have rigid roles, rigid management roles, budget assigned to management instead of a budget assigned to delivery initiatives, and head count assigned to manager, traditional management. So what happens if you are that traditional management when someone comes to you and say the priorities changed? Well, from your point of view, it means that someone is taking away some of your budget, and someone is taking away some of your headcount, while you are still expected to achieve the same goal in order to get the bonus or to move forward with your career. And of course, you have to fight that. If you want to get your bonus, if you want to move ahead to your career, or if you want to fulfill the need of the customer that you are given. So you see, by one side, the SAFE give you the opportunity to change things, but on the other side, it leaves all those rigidity that make it painful for people to deal with those changes. An agile approach will make management adaptive, will focus on products and goals, and will focus on career progression on a different way. So the problem with SAFE is that it leaves in place all the things that create this mismatch. And that's more cultural. Now, very quickly, I mention a few other things. The SAFE approach.
Yes, Luca, I'm adding 5 minutes, just for your information. I'm adding 5 minutes.
No, let's follow. Let's ask if people want to hear more, or if we should move to the next one.
Okay, so we can do in this easy way. We can use the chat, and if you want to continue, you can type yes or Y, or if you want to move to the next topic, you can type no or N. Make sense?
On chat, yes, if you want to give 5 more minutes on this question.
Yeah, we have next, Luca.
Perfect. I love it.
Okay, great. So let's move to the next topic.
SAFE
Please,
is
Luca.
considered de facto framework for implementation of SAP-like system. How can management get confident in anything else without proven stats? My quick answer is that there are no proven stats that SAFE work. And when you see the use cases, they are not convincing at all. So why someone should be convinced to do something different than SAFE? Agile is working. It's 20 years that Agile is delivering for many organizations that do Agile. It's SAFE that have to prove that it works.
So I think that's an interesting point. And I think the reason why that will never change is that this is not a rational data-based decision. I mean, it's a variation of the you'll never be fired for buying IBM. I'm being a bit blasé and flippant about it, but if you've got this perception that a third of all the agile implementations are using the SAFE thing and in the kind of highly rarefied atmosphere of buyer and decision maker, if you haven't got the time or the energy or the inclination to actually drill into tangible data to say, right, okay, 30% of SAFE programs fail, not SAFE implementation, SAFE programs, and this, now, the other, you're not going to spend the time, which means that this is a limbic system type decision, right? This is an emotional type of decision, which means that any decision, any argument that's based on facts or data will just get their backs up and they'll double down on that decision. So I don't think you can. I think you just have to ride it out.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, actually, I would like to add something, the more context to the question, because the specific example which I was trying to seek the opinion about, SAP, it's like a COT system, right? I mean, commercial over-the-counter software. And we have a host of COTs. So majority of the time when a big organization goes for such COTS implementation, they look for SI, a system integrator, because this IT is not their forte. They would rely upon some IT services companies' help to adopt such COTS, which is alien to their legacy setup. Yeah. So in that context of what comes as an ecosystem from SI is like we have the accredited resources with the knowledge of SAFe, which goes very well with your implementation plan. Even if it's a greenfield, brownfield, doesn't matter, but it goes well because you could get the predictability of how your pipeline will look like. And as we boast on the experience of having these accredited resources deployed to drive this, so you should have more confidence in our abilities than someone who is trying to tell you we can transform your organization to have this implementation without any framework. So that was basically the context I was trying to get more answers for.
I mean, what you're saying, what you're saying basically has to do with the promise of predictability. And yes, SAFe promise you predictability. The question is, does it deliver that predictability? And we know that it does not. In the same way that traditional waterfall approaches in a world that is changing fast, and not every delivery. If you are doing a delivery that you did that 10 times before, you know everything up front, you can do waterfall. If you're living in a modern world where COVID may happen, when a lot of things may happen, where the ecosystem, we are hyper connected as consumer, things constantly change. No, in that case, a SAFe give you the promises of predictability, but it's not delivering.
On the devil's advocate side of things, you know, don't forget the fresh kind of value statement in the manifesto, right? So if you've got the right people with the right mindsets, then it doesn't matter what processes they follow. I know I'm just being a bit flippant there, but I think the effect, the ability for a team or a set of teams to react to emerging conditions like an SAP implementation, the method itself might delay them a week or two at a time, but it doesn't necessarily break their inherent ability to cope with it. I think some of the other challenges are just in how SAP implementations work, because another problem with that particular ecosystem is it is very heavily dependent on the careers and financial stability of the SAP consultants who make a good living from it. A bit of random history. SAP have tried in the past to re-architect SAP. They've been unable to do so because of the consulting market that has grown around it. So I think in this scenario, it's very difficult to fundamentally change that, because you're not trying to change one client buying one SAP implementation of the thing. You're trying to change an entire ecosystem of the product, all of the supporting packages, and all of the consulting people who have based their careers on it, to fundamentally operate with a different mentality and operate with different sets of labels on their processes.
I have a strong opinion on the same point. I do work on the ERP platform most of my career, especially on SAP or Oracle or Salesforce, whatever the ERP market it is, in the consulting side. I see there are mixed opportunities around when you go on a greenfield implementation from an SI. But when you see as an end user customer perspective, I see there is an opportunity on the SAFe perspective for the business transformation, like an operational transformation area. That's where you can use the waterfall on the product delivery of the ERP package, any package solution to deliver to the customer as a greenfield. Waterfall is the best approach, what I personally feel when I seen the large scale rollover multinational, multi-global environments. But only the area where I see the waterfall doesn't fit in that particular transformation exercise is the business transformation. When I say business, the operational and the roles transforming from one to another due to the nature of the new product, new technology coming into the business, that changes the roles and responsibility of every day, what they are doing over a period of time using on the legacy platforms. So that's where I see the SAFe will be there on the operational perspective, but not on the technology perspective. I personally feel waterfall when you're going on a greenfield. But again, the SAFe is useful when you are seeing on the operational improvisational area, when you already have a SAP product brought over a couple of years ago and you want to enhance the product but not upgrading the product. Again, when you are enhancing the product, you have a regular windows of delivery to the system where again you can bring in your agile methodology of development and delivery cycle. That's what I seen on a delivery side. So these are mixed areas where I see opportunity and there is non-opportunity on the SAFe perspective or the waterfall perspective. That's my personal view, what I've seen over the last 20 years, where is exactly fitable and where it is not suitable in an ERP, whether it is a SaaS or whatever it is.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Corrado.
Sorry, yes, 10 minutes, it's over. Again, as before, we can use the chat windows to continue or not. Please type yes, no, or next. Okay, we have a couple of next. Okay, yes, move on. Next topic.
Okay, and remember, you can have a look at the question and still vote them. The next question is, why do you think the SAFe, Corrado, I think there is a little echo. Yeah, thank you. Why do you think SAFe framework is the most prominent? Why not Scrum at Scale, Nexus, or less? Well, just to remember the previous picture, SAFe is the most prominent in terms of commercial frameworks. There is a bigger majority of people that is using an ad hoc method. Whether it is a good ad hoc method or a bad one, we cannot say, but they use a custom method. So SAFe is the prominent among the commercial frameworks. The next question is about success metrics for Agile and Agile outside IT. Agile is not an end, it's a means. And your company know why they think Agile will help to achieve the goal. The metrics should depend on the goal that the company want to achieve.
I personally agree with that, because your organization has a purpose, whatever it is, right? Sell things, make things, whatever. If they can do that more effectively because of a different way of working, then they are going to be more effective as an org. So I'm with you on that one. The headache that I think for me when I read that is the entity in the organization, the buyer, who decides that they need to change their way of working to be more agile. I'm simplifying for brevity instead of opening up many more cans of worms. It's like they will need to justify spending a certain amount of money on some form of transformation, however it might look. So I think that is a reason for needing them. It's not a measure of how agile you are. It's a series of measures that help you justify an investment in changing your ways of working. That's what I can see out of this.
So a way to say that is that we have a waterfall program to implement Agile, and we want the metrics to see how the program is going on.
Potentially, yeah. I don't know if it'll be waterfall with an actual end state, because I think these numbers, if it's turned into a number, it'll behave on an asymptotic curve. It'll never be maximum agile. That's impossible. So it has to be something where you stop improving at the rate that you were before, because your improvements are a lot more nuanced. But I think there's a threshold by which point you can say we're better, statistically significantly better at delivery than we were a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever. That there has to be a way of trying to say something like that without turning it into a number or a KPI that somebody gets paid based on.
Anyone want to mention some metrics, an example of metrics that can be useful?
Yeah, Luca, one aspect that we haven't discussed is the project assurance thing that we have in Waterfall, and it touches on Arun's point. So we used to have like a minimum bar and a maximum bar on the minimum number of things that a project should do in terms of the terms of reference, the project plans, level 1 and level more detailed, etc. And maybe I'm thinking that SAFe may offer you the similar kind of framework that Project Assurance, which is an independent team, can come to any part of the organization and say, how agile are you compared to this list? I know that one of the banks use this quite properly as a form of doing this. Yeah. So it's a checklist to say, well, do you use a Kanban mode? Yes, I do. Do you have 2-week sprints? Yes, I do. Do you do reviews? Yes, I do. You know, that kind of thing, to make sure the processes are working properly across the organization.
For me, those are the visible signs, right? That's the stuff on top of the iceberg, the observable things. But because Agile is more like about culture, mindsets, behaviors, and things that are beneath the surface, you can't directly infer that from just those measurements. You can have perfectly linear thinking folks that stand up every day for 10 minutes, and on the surface it looks like it's a tick. So yeah, you might be able to over time show that there's more of these activities, more of these artifacts and events happening, which might suggest a greater degree of adoption. But I suppose that's more like trend analysis rather than absolute measurements.
Yeah. Sorry. One other point, and forgive me because this is from a delivery point of view. We've not mentioned the Jira stack as a backlog and stuff like that. So would it be a metric of how many of the Jiras that you've cleared over a particular thing?
I think some people mentioned, like, sorry, I was looking at the comments, cycle times and flow rates. If you as a team are more productive now than you were a year ago, then there's an argument for saying that your new way of working is better than your old one. But that can easily be gamed, right? Just write smaller tickets, and then you can get through more of them. So there's way that you have to work out how it is being gamed, because any measure gets gamed.
The limit with the measuring the progress on the backlog is that you can do the work, but you may not achieve the goal. Is an item backlog done when the goal is achieved, or only when the work behind the backlog item is done? So that is a reflection. Sorry, Aaron was raising it. Please go, Aaron.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And I really want to say thank you for this fantastic conversation here. So one of the things, so we use the backlogs, but we try to keep them very tactical and in shorter timeframes. And then one of the things we like to do is link a lot of the value stream KPIs, which we feel those ones can have, those can tie closer, feedback loops, especially around, clients. And we'll use a lot of, portfolio Kanban boards to kind of establish the portfolio initiatives. And if we can link that, I mean, it doesn't happen every time, but if you can link that to kind of the business outcomes around the investments, it's like you can start to build this value chain, so to speak, or, or a chain, I should say, of the value stream KPIs. Does that make sense or no?
Yeah, to me, seems you are connecting the concept of doing agile to the business outcome that you want to achieve.
Exactly. And then if we get that moving, we'll sometimes, it depends on the leaders, but we can then link the strategic themes. And then that's when you can get to a more enterprise portfolio strategy, where, everything kind of starts to become a little more harmonized, because then you can go to budgeting and you can link all those pieces together to justify why, we're moving X dollars to Y, themes. And, if everybody agrees because the logic is rational, then you tend to get the good, a more aligned organization. And what we found is if you can link the performance, this is where it gets harder. It's harder to do that with individual developers, but you could do it with teams. But then you're right, people will try to game the teams, right? They'll try to move around to go to the cool themes. And sometimes there's just work that has to get done that isn't, cool, but is still critical. And that's where I found some of the value stream KPIs maybe don't work as well, is a lot of that maintenance and support kind of, BAU operations, a lot of the value. So I've tried to tap more into the old school quality, like old school, like pre-Six Sigma even, because there's a lot there on the quality that you have to maintain just to have reliability. Because if you don't have that, then you're wasting cycles and resources just maintaining that. So it's actually like a negative cycle function, it's called.
Any more comments on this, or should we move to the next questions? Happy to add something.
Sorry.
I take the silence as a no, so I skip to the next.
Yes, time is over. Yes, I was saying just that. Time is over.
Then I think it's a good time to say goodbye to everyone, and thank you very much for all the comments and the insight that you provided.
Yes, sure. Let me add just one comment that next week we are going to have our last event before the summer break. It is on a completely different topic. It's about get things done. That is, let me say, it's reductive, I know, but it's a time management methodology. So something really practical, and there will be a lot of insights that you can take away with you after the meeting, some tricks on how you can better manage your time. This is just to remind you what is going to happen. And thanks a lot, Luca, for facilitating this conversation. Was really, really interesting. And also because we really shared our experience, our thoughts, so really, really helpful. And so I hope to see you next time, and have a great night. What can I say?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you.
All. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Ula.